What is up YouTube? And today we have a PvP mostly centered on RTA tier list for you guys today, and we're just going to be talking about how these characters actually rank in a tier list for RTA and, like I said, PvP as well. Now basically there's going to be 5 separate tiers. As you can see, this is just my opinion, and I actually kind of ordered like the first 2, like the meta defining and the strong characters, kind of in order from left to right. Although they are very similar in strength, I'd say. The balance isn't too overwhelming in this game so far. But, as you can see, there's going to be 5 different tiers. We have the meta-defining tier. These characters are going to be super strong, highly contested, and can pretty much just control a draft by themselves. You have the strong tier. These characters are still very good, although you have to be a bit more careful with how you pick them. For example, if you pick some of them early, you can get punished on the ban protect pretty heavily. Next we have the niche and counterpicks. These characters, although there aren't too many, they're going to be picked in very rare situations, but they're very good in those situations if you can make it work. And then we have the Cleave and CC only tier. These characters are mostly used for Cleave and CC. Now this playstyle is more about how your team comp fits together rather than just a single character's strength, but they all have certain strengths, and I'll talk about where you can pick them. I don't really play Cleave and CC though, so I'm not the most knowledgeable about it, but I do have some insight playing against it, so we'll talk about that. And then we have the last tier, basically the buff for PvP tier. These characters are just not that great in PvP currently, in my opinion. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 people that can make it work, but I haven't really seen them ever at all. So yeah, I'll just be talking about what I've seen, all my experience climbing up to top 25, and just what I see in general for RTA, and I guess Union Wars kind of as well. So starting off at the meta defining tier, the character that I think defines the meta really like heavily is Holden. He's at the top here. The reason why he's like, in my opinion, the best RTA character is even though he but he won't actually be the best character in the 4v4 sometimes. The reason why he's meta defining is because he is a really safe pick that can actually fit into every archetype. So what I mean by archetype is like the standard playstyle, which people call bruiser. I like to call it standard though, because it's kind of the standard way to play in most PvP centric games. Then you have the Cleave and CC archetype, and he works in all of them, and he's decent into all of them. So the reason why he's so good is because he has so much utility, right? You have his S2 to push back and also reset turn cooldowns, which is insanely strong. It forces certain characters to be on bulwark, such as Fuqiu. And you have his S3, which has attack down and an effect resist down. The attack down is very good against characters like Liliam and stuff like that, anything that needs to do damage. And he also can dispel buffs, so you can dispel immunities before you have like a CC or go. For example, even though he's not the fastest on your team, if you run like Lily, Holden, and then something that can CC like Obol, you can actually push up your Holden first, have him use his S3 to dispel, and then you can have your Obol CC after. So you can see he's very flexible, very safe pick. For that reason, that's why he's first picked a lot. He's very strong, obviously, after his buffs, but mostly because he's just a really safe pick. And when you draft, you don't want to really pick a character early that gets countered easily. Otherwise, it kind of just, tilts the draft and makes you kind of play catch up in draft, which is going to be very hard. So Holden is just going to be one of the best first picks right now. Next, we have Fuqiu. So I have her ranked super highly because this character is actually the best healer in the standard mirrors. She does struggle a bit versus control because she doesn't really have any dispelling and stuff like that, but when she gets her S3 off, your team pretty much cannot die. It's just a very good shield. Even if the shield doesn't go off or gets dispelled, the turn meter push and also the healing on every turn is insane, especially with Supernova. And the best part is when you pick Fuqiu early, it really opens up you to pick Tiamat, because the way that her turn meter push works is when Tiamat actually takes damage from damage share, it will work with Fuqiu's turn meter. So it's super broken. Just a very solid healer. She just has the best healing in the game right now, because when you get hit, you get healed and turn meter pushed. And when you take your turn, you get healed and turn meter pushed. And you can build her slow so that you have really high uptime and Moonlit Veil. Just a very powerful character. And I actually first pick her sometimes when I know I'm against another standard player. Next, we have Lily. Now, Lily is actually not only a turn 1 character as people think. In the current meta, people have swapped her to a bruiser build, and she's super strong. And the reason is because a lot of the damage in this game is just overtuned in my opinion, which is why you see everything on Bloodbath. And Lily just, adds to that because she basically makes your twin trick target take extra turns because you're pulling them for their S1 with a follow-up, and you also turn meter push and give speed buff, which is insanely valuable. So you can pretty much pair her with like a Holden, you can pair her with Liliam, you can pair her with Rahu, even with Kazuyo for CC, Tiamat, Viper, right, Mizuki, just anything, and it makes them into like a hyper carry. Now the reason why this is so strong is because a lot of their S1s hit very hard, and because of this, she's just a very valuable character. She can also reset cooldowns for your team and also push back the cooldowns on the enemy team. Just a very oppressive character right now. I didn't really pick her at all last season, but now I'm picking her very frequently. You'll see her highly contested, maybe not first pick because she does, if you pick her, you actually lose out on opportunity costs for picking other strong characters. But if you can pick her in the ban protect spot on 3, or if you pick her 1-2 as the second pick, she's a very strong character. The reason why Lily is so good is because you're taking double the turns basically on your DPS. What makes it very strong is because if you like pick Holden for example and they pick Tiamat, or if you pick Tiamat and they end up picking Mizuki, if you have Lily on your side, you still hard win those counter matchups because you're just taking way more turns. So because of that, Lily's just super strong. I think she's still very, very powerful in PvP and just really good. Next we have Sania. So Sania, in my opinion, is the second best healer. I think, you can make an argument for her being the best because she's a lot easier to build and she has dispelling. But she's really strong because she cycles super fast and Gigabyte amplifies that. So like a 250 speed Sania, for example, can feel like she's on like 450, honestly. She can raise your max health, which scales very well into Etheria effects, and she can res. Just a very oppressive character. I think something needs to be done about her, whether it be maybe not nerfing her, but how Gigabyte works or something like that, because she is super, super oppressive and one of the biggest reasons, along with Fuqiu, why the games go super long right now. Next we have Kazuyo the Reverie. I hate this character with a burning passion. There's kind of like a meme in the high RTA community where, if you find someone in a match and you know who you're against and they're in the Discord, you just at them and say, no Kazuyo. Because this character is just really, really stupid. I think her kit's okay, but her having a turn meter pushback on her S2 is just so oppressive. And the fact that she has a 2-turn sleep is really dumb. And also the fact that Jackal Guard doesn't wake up her sleep and also pushes back even further. So what happens if you S3, right? You push back after you sleep them for, I think it's 15% turn meter. And if your Jackal Guard hits whatever you select as your target, it pushes back even more. So just really dumb, very oppressive. You can actually win with her as your solo DPS with just healers against bruisers if you just don't get resisted. And I really hate this character. I think if any character needs to be nerfed, it's her, and it's just her S1 duration in PvP, and I think she'll be fine. Next we have Liliam. Liliam's a very good character as well. You can't really first pick her right now. People used to first pick her, but they kind of figured out, she gets punished very hard by other, tanky bruisers. And the reason why is because she's just very squishy. Basically, her win condition is kind of get her HP seal spread twice on different targets, and then after that you can play for your S2 execute. Also, if you get to your second void form with a lot of silence, you kind of just win. But I mostly pick her as an answer to control nowadays, and I also first pick her against like control players. But I think she does have some weaknesses because with the DPS Viper build, she actually is harder to play. It kind of just hard cucks her, honestly. So because of that, she's not as broken as a first pick as some of the other characters, but still a very solid early pick and just does crazy damage. If you pair her with Lily, she can just, take down entire teams on her own. Rahu. Okay, so Rahu also got buffed like Holden, and Rahu is insanely strong. I wanted to actually rank him higher in the same tier, but you can't really first pick him unless Holden's banned. But the reason why he's strong is how ban protection works. So usually people early pick Holden right now, and it's a good thing to do, right? Because he's very powerful and flexible. But people respond to that by ban protecting Rahu, and you're probably thinking, wait, you're ban protecting Rahu, why? And it's because the only thing that really shuts him down is going to be control and CC, and also Cleave as well, like Messiah especially, and Holden in the standard mirror. And if you know you're going to go against another standard player, which is pretty obvious by the time you get to the ban protection spot, you can pick him against Holden and then ban out Holden, and you're already at an advantage in draft for the most part, right? There's going to be some situations where it's not good, but for the most part, generally that's where he's very strong. And he is just a menace, right? If you proc the 50% chance to follow up, he just, chain deletes characters and he just nukes them. Like his S1 hits like a truck, especially when his artisan procs and gives him that defense buff. He starts hitting like a monster. And if you can actually get a lucky follow-up attack before like a key target or a key unit takes your turn, for example, if I have like Rahu and Liliam on the team for some reason, and my Rahu follow up before, Liliam takes her turn, well, that's just a free kill. So yeah, he also has defense break, which is super annoying, and a very hard-hitting S3. So very good character. After I built him, actually, I went from Masters 2 to like top 25 when I first started climbing with like a 90% win rate, because he just really controls draft in the ban protection spot. Next we have Lingluo. So a lot of newer players might think she's the best PvP healer because she has that super big burst AoE healing. The thing is, in longer fights it's not as good, and she really relies on whale prayers, and that can get dispelled off by a lot of characters such as Holden. Viper can dispel it, Mizuki can dispel it, and Veronika can steal it, which makes it so that she's kind of just a hard counter to her. So because of that, you're not going to really pick her that much. She also just heals less than other healers, so you're mostly going to pick her as a control counter or as like a third option as a healer. Usually Fuqiu and Sania are going to be way more highly contested, and then if you for some reason they pick Sania and Fuqiu together and you didn't pick a healer yet, you're kind of relegated to Lingluo. And even though I say relegated, she's still very strong as a healer, don't get me wrong, especially on Gigabyte. But you will notice in longer drawn out fights, especially in standard mirrors, she does lose a lot of value. But I do pick her all the time into control. I think control players like almost always ban her or Dokidoki, because she can be put on a high FRES build and just pretty much solo dispel your team. So that's why she's very good. She's meta defining in the fact that she kind of shuts down control by herself, so she's a very good character. So next we have the strong characters. These characters are all still very good. You can still pick them early and stuff like that. Just keep in mind they do have some more counters, I'd say, and they have more like workarounds, but they're still very powerful. So starting off, we have Tiamat. So a lot of people think that Tiamat's like up here, and she's very good against like Cleave as well because she's very tanky, especially on Amber or Lighthouse. But when you're playing the standard matchup, she loses a lot of value. Even against Holden, you can't really pick her early because, like I said, if Holden gets paired with a Lily, then she gets shut down very hard because you just lose the damage race. And there's other like green characters that are good, right? For example, there's only like one good blue bruiser in Tiamat, one good red bruiser in Holden, but there's two good green bruisers in Rahu and Mizuki, and Liliam can shut her down with HP seal. So she does have some counters, but she's still very good. You can pick her. Some people like to play like full healers and then ban protect Tiamat, but against good players that know how to draft, this gets punished pretty hard, so you want to be careful about that. But she's still a very solid bruiser pick, very good with healers, and I recommend if you're going to play her a lot to just always pick two healers with her. Next we have Viper. So Viper is a menace, and it's because you can actually put him on an anti-cleave build and just play him as an anti-cleaver on like full tank because of his passive and his S3. Or you play him on the Golden Lion DPS build and he is just super frustrating. The reason is because he can counterattack randomly whenever, and at 4 stacks he just does that AoE dispel, attack down, speed down, which cripples your entire team, and he just hits like a truck once he ramps up. So in longer fights he's very good. He's really good when paired with something that boosts his speed, such as Lily or Fuqiu. And even though he's a lot squishier on the DPS build, people can't really one-shot him because he has that passive built in. Although if you do run against the Messiah, you will die. And also Liliam kind of gets destroyed by him, right? He not stops, but he reduces the damage that Liliam can do with their S3, so the HP seal isn't as high. And he also can dispel her buffs that are very important from her S3 and also put attack down and speed down, which makes him a very good character. Next we have Dokidoki. Last season I had her as the best character in RTA, and I think a lot of people did as well. But the reason why she's fallen down is because there's just too many good picks to pick before her. And even though she's extremely powerful, she actually doesn't really do too much compared to the other characters right now. And you can actually burst her down very quickly because almost every single Dokidoki is built on effect resist now to counter CC, which is like her big strength, countering CC players. And because of that, she can die pretty quickly. If you can pair her with Fuqiu, then she actually is pretty solid in the standard matchups, but without Fuqiu, it's kind of hard to play her, and it's just that she isn't as strong anymore as, like, you know, the sole CC counter, because you have a lot of characters you can build on F-Res now, like Lingluo, Sania, and even Fuqiu, and then you can even run Bulwark on other characters. So I think Dokidoki's definitely fallen down. I don't really have a good explanation for it, but playing it just feels kind of bad. You can't really first pick her, right, unless you're playing CC, and you can ban protect her against CC, but picking her later on, she's more of like a 4 or 5 pick that you pick when you want something to boost your turn meter. Still very strong though, because in long fights, her, I think it's called data stream or something, whatever her buff is that gives you final damage and speed, is really good, but not as good as, I'd say, the top tier characters. Mizuki, yeah, that was a bad explanation on Dokidoki, but it's pretty hard to explain. Mizuki, she's a SR green character, solid bruiser, very good into Tiamat. I like to pick her a lot when I know that they're pinching me on DPSs, and what I mean by that is, like, if I first pick Holden and they go like, I don't know, like Lily and whatever, and then I pick, you know, my healers, and then they start pinching the DPS by picking like 2, then I like to pick Mizuki, because you want to pick her, because if you don't, you'll run out of DPS. And Mizuki's a solid character, defense buff's good, dispel's good. The only thing is, you can kind of like hard ignore her, and she doesn't really do that much, so you have to keep that in mind. But against Tiamat, heal block is very good, you know, dispel is very good, and even though she might not be as strong as like Rahu or Holden or, like, you know, Liliam and stuff like that, she is a solid pick to have in your arsenal, because you will want to pick her in some situations, like later on in the draft. Veronika is a pretty solid counter pick. She's good against Cleave, she is decent against CC as well with her immunity spread, and she is also a hard counter to Lingluo. So a strategy I see a lot of top players do is they pick out the early healers, and then they bait people to pick Lingluo because she's like the only healer left, and then they pick Veronika and she kind of just wins. She does a ton of damage with her S2, she has a huge shield, and she can steal buffs. Pretty much just broken, right? I think she's pretty underrated. I think more people want to build her, honestly, but she requires decent lattice investment, so that's probably why they don't. But she's a very strong character. Next we have Chiaki. She's like in the same category as Lingluo, as like a kind of like a tier below healer, but I think she's very good. She's really good into anti-cleave, or I guess into cleave as an anti-cleaver, because her S3 just reduces damage you take. And she's also very good, surprisingly, into Liliam, because if you get your Origami Guardian up before Liliam takes a turn, the HP seal is basically not nothing, but it's very close to nothing. So very good healer. I usually pick her in 4 or 5 if they pinch like Sania, Fuqiu, and they're off the table, which always happens, by the way. So she's a very solid pick. Obol is a premier CC'er. He's not like a pure CC'er though. You can pick him later on into the draft against bruisers, because he has that dispel, and then he can also CC after. Pretty flexible. I've seen some bloodbath Obols, which is pretty interesting, but yeah, very good CC'er. I usually pre-ban him and Kazuyo all the time, so he's a very annoying character. And even though mostly he's played in pure CC comps, you can pick him into slow comps that don't have a good dispeller as a punish pick, and he's pretty solid. Next we have Ninfoniel. So Ninfoniel is new character, not a lot of data on her, but I've seen her quite a bit and I've been trying to test her out, and she's pretty decent. Even though the attack buff doesn't benefit, you know, units like Holden or Tiamat that much, it really benefits characters like Viper and Liliam. The immunity is super strong, 2-turn immunity on your target, and then the shield is very good, and her S2 is very strong as well. I think she's pretty underrated. I'm not going to say too much about her because she's pretty new, but just keep in mind she's becoming a bit more popular now, and she's a pretty solid pick, even in standard matchups, and she's also very good in Cleave, right, because she buffs your attack by a lot, and like things like Messiah and Yeli will just hit like a truck with her. Now we have the niche and Counterpicks. These characters you're going to want to pick in like certain situations, but not really required to have built. Lilith is mostly like a 4 or 5 pick against teams that have low dispelling. So basically, you know, if they don't have Lingluo or Dokidoki or Liliam, you can pick her. But yeah, she gets countered by a lot of characters right now. Her play rate has definitely gone down this season because there's a lot more answers to CC. So because of that, she's not as good, but she's still solid if you pick her late into the draft. Hoyan is going to be kind of like a tank buster, doesn't kill through Bloodbath, but I've seen people use her on anti-cleave, which is very good, and kind of as like a pocket pick. Can't really say too much about her because I've seen a lot less of her this season. I just know she's a good pick in certain situations, mostly to counter Cleave for the most part, and she's pretty decent into Liliam as well. Kachi the Guard is kind of like an answer to CC as well. I think most people have him built if they don't have Doki, and I've seen him on like Alicorn and stuff like that, and like Bulwark as well, and just like full F-res to just prevent the CC train from going out. But, you know, if you run him on F-res, you have the chance to knock crit on your S3, which is really bad, so you can't run him on too much and just be like Insight, I guess, and like the second passive shell from your shell. But he's an okay answer to CC, but not the best. Born is like an okay bruiser. So I said there's only one good blue bruiser in Tiamat. Born's like decent as well, but I don't think he's like niche or counter pick. I think he's just like not that great because Bloodbath really cucks him, and his damage is just pretty low. Funnily enough, like you run him on Dark Moon because Dark Moon will amp his damage, and Dark Moon like just does more damage than he does, which is crazy. But you know, I guess you can build him if you want. I just don't think he's that great. I know there's some people in the top ranks that have success with him, but I find it really hard to make him work, and he gets shut down by a lot of the characters. Celine is kind of like a copium because I like this character, but she's like decent, I guess, as like a sustainer if you really want to build her. Honestly, she probably needs I don't think she needs a buff for PvP, but I really think that she's a strong character. It's just that no one has invested into her because she requires a lot of lattice to work. You pretty much need to max her. But she has shielding every single turn based off her own max HP is great, which is great. And also she has a debuff that can ignore passive, so you can stop, you know, Holdens from counterattacking and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty good. Doesn't work against Liliam though, which is pretty sad. Her forgetfulness counts as control for some reason. So if it worked, I think she'd be a lot better, but yeah, for now she's down here. So now we have the Cleave and CC characters. I don't really play this playstyle, but I fight against it quite often, so I'll talk about which characters are good for what, but nothing too in-depth because I don't really know too much about cleaving and CCing. Honestly, it's more about just building a team that, you know, pairs well together. But Heinrich's very good as a Dispeller. This guy is so annoying to play against. If you ban protect him and you just pick full CC, if you're faster than the enemy team, you always have a chance to win, but mostly to dispel stuff. You can also build him on Rev, and he's very good, but Jackal Guard and Codex are also great. Tsukiyomi, Premier Pusher, she's like Lily, but she has that immediate attack buff, which is great, and she's mostly going to be for Cleave. Hellkid is mostly for Cleave and also for CC players as well. You can run him on Revelation. He's very strong. He does a huge AoE chunk at the beginning, and then he has that immunity and that shield, which is great. Messiah, in my opinion, is the best cleaver right now in terms of damage. You just buff him, and then if you ban protect him, he will almost one-shot you through Bloodbath, which is crazy. But this guy is an extremely powerful cleaver. Yeli's pretty much the same thing, although I think she's slightly worse than Messiah in cleaving, but still very strong. Defense break is super strong, right? It really cripples any defense scalers, and she can do a ton of damage. Mia is very, very sleeper unit. I don't think a lot of people know about her, but she's insane in both Cleave and CC. The top Cleave player, Youngo, actually runs her on Revelation, and you're probably wondering, huh? But it's because her skills are just really broken for like fast players because she can reset skill cooldown, she can dispel buffs like, you know, Bulwark and immunity, and she can also push you back on the turn meter. So it makes her a very strong character for that. But you know, the shell doesn't really matter too much on her. I think that's why some people run her on Rev just for the extra damage. But in CC comps, you can run her on Codex, and that is super annoying to deal with because she can just S2 you twice, and it's just really frustrating. Mio is like a very good opener for CC, very powerful there, has that freeze as well. You just want to pair her with something that can dispel because she doesn't have dispel herself. Yang is very good as a Revelation Cleave single target character, pretty strong. Freya is a very good Cleave and CC opener. You can run her on Codex or Revelation, it's really up to you. RC is going to be for CC players, super fun. Batsby is the new character. This guy is insanely strong, I think. I think he's like literally the best cleaver. The thing is, people don't have lattice to invest into him, but I've seen Batsby's on 1-1-5 investment with like 0 dupes, just like almost one-shotting teams with S3 into S2. So many different builds to try out. I think he's very sleeper right now, but really good character. Kachi, underrated CC character. You have that AoE stun and turn pushback. The only thing is his base speed's pretty slow, so you need something to help him take his turn. But if you're against a full turn 2 player, you can just abuse that and just kind of CC forever. Kazuyo, the red one, actually pretty decent as well. Reduces cooldowns, speed buff, has a dispel as well. I've seen some people use her in control. Rin is kind of like a cleaver, but she doesn't do as much damage as the other one, so she's a little bit below them. Same thing with Rosa as Rin. Beyonce is like that buffer for your team. I don't think she's as good as Ninfoniel right now, but she's still a good, buffer for Cleave if you need damage. Kraken is a CC character. The only thing is he only hits once on his S3, which is the same thing as Nahor, which is why you're gonna miss a lot of your CCs a lot of the time, which I think is why he's not that great. But he's still pretty decent if you can land your freezes, obviously. Kloss is underrated, I think. She's a solid opener. She has the highest base speed. If you're speed contesting someone, you can actually use Kloss because she can open with your S2, with her S2, even though the turn meter pushback is very small. If you are just straight up speed contesting, that's where you can use her. So I've seen people use her for that. Chiaki the Echo, underrated, very annoying turn meter pushing, decent in Cleave and CC. Yeah, I've seen people use her actually, and she seems very, very annoying because she makes her team lap you super hard. Nahor, actually a decent character honestly for CC, but like I said, he suffers from the fact that he only hits once. So if you get resisted once, you kind of just lose. Kazuyo, for example, hits 3 times, so it's really hard to not, land your CC. But Nahor gets resisted like all the time. Valerian, just like a free-to-play kind of early game Cleave enabler with her attack buff, but that's pretty much it. And then Giada, I've seen some people run like Giada comps where they ban protect her and then run like full buffing, what's it called, damage amping teams, and she actually works, but pretty niche. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this tier list though, guys. Don't want to make it any longer than it needs to be. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about it, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.